Welcome to Tales by FELIX, where every story unlocks a new world. Remember to subscribe, like and share. Let's begin. The ballroom glittered under 1,000 crystal chandeliers, a symphony of clinking glasses and forced laughter. Ethan Caldwell, a lanky 24-year-old startup intern, stood awkwardly at the edge of the high society gala, clutching a lukewarm soda. He wasn't supposed to be here. His boss, desperate to fill a seat, had dragged him along to this elite fundraiser for a tech charity in San Francisco. Ethan's thrift store blazer and scuffed shoes screamed outsider among the tailored suits and designer gowns. Across the room, Sophia Loren held court. At 26, she was the city's darling, heiress to a real estate empire, Instagram influencer with 2 million followers, and a face that launched 1,000 brand deals. Her emerald gown shimmered as she laughed, surrounded by admirers. Ethan watched, half curious, half intimidated. She was untouchable, a living goddess in a room of mortals. He didn't mean to catch her eye. But when a waiter tripped, spilling champagne near her, Ethan's dry humor slipped out. "Careful, or the queen might lose her crown," he muttered to a colleague, loud enough for nearby guests to snicker. Sophia's head snapped toward him. The room quieted. Her eyes, sharp as cut glass, locked onto Ethan's. "What did you say?" Her voice was honey laced with venom. Ethan froze, his throat dry. "Nothing, I just... You think you're funny?" She stepped closer, her heels clicking like a predator's claws. The crowd parted. Ethan's colleague abandoned him, melting into the onlookers. "You're nobody. You don't belong here." "I didn't mean," Ethan started, but Sophia's hand cracked across his face. The slap echoed, a sharp report that silenced the room. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones were already out, recording. Ethan's cheek burned, his vision blurring with shock and shame. Laughter broke out, cruel and unrelenting. "Know your place," Sophia said, turning away with a smirk. The crowd closed around her, and Ethan was left alone, the sting of her palm matched only by the weight of 100 mocking eyes. He stumbled out of the venue, the night air cold against his flushed face. His phone buzzed. Clips of the slap were already spreading online, tagged with hashtags like #Slapgate and #PartyFool. By morning, it would be viral. Ethan woke to a nightmare. His phone was a battlefield of notifications. 47 missed calls, 200 texts, and a Twitter feed drowning in memes. One showed his stunned face with the caption, "When you talk trash to royalty." Another looped the slap in slow motion, Sophia's manicured hand a blur of vengeance. His name, Ethan Caldwell, was trending, but not for anything good. At the startup where he interned, the office buzzed with whispers. "Yo, slap guy!" a coworker shouted across the open-plan desks. Ethan's face burned as he slunk to his cubicle. His boss, a wiry man named Greg, called him in. "Ethan, this is a PR disaster," Greg said, tossing his phone on the desk. The screen showed a blog post, "Intern's Gaff Tanks Startup's Image." The board's freaking out. Clients are asking questions. "It wasn't my fault," Ethan said, voice low. "She overreacted." Greg sighed. "Doesn't matter. You're radioactive now. Take a week. Lay low." Ethan nodded, but inside, something hardened. He left the office, dodging stares, and walked to a coffee shop. There, he overheard 2 baristas giggling over their phones. "This guy's life is over," one said, showing the slap video. Ethan pulled his hoodie up and left. That night, in his cramped apartment, he stared at the ceiling. The humiliation wasn't just the slap, it was the world's glee in his downfall. But one thought burned brighter than the shame: she'll regret this. He didn't know how or when, but Sophia Loren would pay. Sophia Loren was a brand, a lifestyle, a myth. Her Instagram was a curated masterpiece. Yacht parties in Monaco, fashion weeks in Paris, charity galas where she played the benevolent heiress. Her bio read, "Building a better world, one smile at a time." Her followers ate it up, calling her inspirational and flawless. But Ethan, digging through her digital footprint, saw cracks in the facade. Her family's real estate empire, Loren Properties, was old money, built on ruthless deals and questionable evictions. A Reddit thread, buried deep, hinted at her father's ties to shady developers. Sophia's public persona, kind, generous, untouchable, was a carefully crafted lie. She wasn't just a socialite, she was a machine, leveraging her beauty and charm to secure brand deals and political connections. Ethan found an interview where she laughed off the slap. "Some people need a wake-up call," she said, tossing her hair. The host chuckled, and the audience clapped. Ethan's jaw clenched. She wasn't sorry. She was proud. He scrolled through her posts, noting her habits, favorite cafes, gym routines, even the designers she wore. He wasn't obsessed. Not yet. He was studying. Sophia was a fortress, but every fortress had a weakness. Hers was arrogance. She believed no one could touch her. "You're wrong," Ethan whispered to his laptop screen, her smiling face glowing back. "I'll find a way." Ethan deleted his social media accounts. The memes, the DMs, the pitying texts from distant cousins, it was too much. He quit his internship, ignoring Greg's pleas to ride it out. He didn't want to ride anything. He wanted to rebuild. He moved to a cheaper apartment, a studio with peeling paint and a flickering light bulb. His savings were meager, but his mind was sharp. He'd always been good with code, a skill he'd honed in college but never fully unleashed. Now, he had a purpose. He started building a fintech app, something simple yet revolutionary, a platform to make micro-investments accessible to the average person. No minimums, no jargon, just wealth building for the underdog. He called it Rise. Nights blurred into days as he coded, fueled by coffee and quiet rage. The slap replayed in his mind, not as pain but as fire. His first version flopped. Bugs crashed the app within hours. He didn't sleep for 2 days, fixing it. The second version gained traction. 1,000 downloads, then 10,000. A small angel investor noticed, then another. By month 6, Rise was featured on a tech blog. The app for the 99%, they called it. Ethan stayed anonymous, using a pseudonym for press. He wasn't ready to be seen. One night, exhausted but wired, he looked at himself in a cracked mirror. The scrawny intern was gone. His jaw was sharper, his eyes harder. He was still Ethan, but he was becoming something else, someone who could play the game. 2 years later, Rise was a phenomenon. The app had 10 million users, a sleek interface, and a valuation of $1.2 billion. Ethan, now 26, was a ghost in his own success story. He operated as E.C. Stone, the mysterious founder who declined interviews and photo ops. The tech world speculated, was he a recluse? A genius? Ethan didn't care. He was busy. He moved to a minimalist penthouse, all glass and steel, overlooking San Francisco. His days were meetings with VCs, coders, and marketers, but his nights were for planning. Sophia's name occasionally popped up, her latest brand deal, her latest red carpet appearance. Each mention was a reminder. This isn't over. At a dive bar one evening, he overheard a conversation that sparked an idea. 2 tech bros were discussing a charity gala, the kind Sophia loved to headline. "She's speaking at the Hope Summit next month," one said. "Lauron Properties is a sponsor." Ethan sipped his drink, wheels turning. He contacted the gala's organizer through a shell company, offering a massive donation, on one condition: Sophia Loren must be a featured guest. The organizer, dazzled by the money, agreed. He leaned back, staring at the city skyline. The slap had broken him once. Now it was his compass. Sophia thought she'd won that night. She had no idea what was coming. 2 years had transformed Ethan Caldwell into a shadow of power. At 26, he was no longer the scrawny intern who'd crumbled under Sophia Loren's slap. His fintech app, Rise, had exploded into a $1.2 billion empire, its logo plastered on billboards and bus stops across San Francisco. Yet Ethan remained invisible, operating as E.C. Stone, a name whispered in tech circles with equal parts awe and mystery. He'd traded his thrift store blazer for tailored suits, his awkward slouch for a quiet, commanding presence. His penthouse, a fortress of glass and steel, overlooked the city like a king surveying his chessboard. But the slap still haunted him. Not the pain, it was the laughter, the viral memes, the way the world had gleefully torn him apart. He'd silenced the noise by deleting his digital footprint, but Sophia's face lingered in his mind, a spark for his ambition. Every late-night coding session, Every investor meeting, every calculated move was fueled by one thought: she'll pay. Ethan's anonymity was his shield. He declined interviews, sent proxies to public events, and used encrypted servers to mask his identity. When Forbes published a feature on Rise, they used a stock photo of a silhouette, speculating about the reclusive genius. Ethan read it with a smirk, sipping coffee in his minimalist kitchen. The world didn't know him, not yet. His team, a tight-knit group of coders and strategists, knew him only as a driven leader with a knack for anticipating trends. In a rare moment of camaraderie, his CTO, Maya, teased him during a late-night brainstorm. "EC, you ever gonna tell us who you really are?" she asked, tossing a stress ball across the conference table. Ethan caught it, his smile tight. "What's a name worth when the work speaks for itself?" Maya laughed. "Fair. But you're hiding something. I can tell." He tossed the ball back, his eyes unreadable. "Keep coding, Maya. That's what matters." That night, alone in his penthouse, he pulled up Sophia's latest Instagram post, her in a gold gown, captioned, "Living my truth." The comments worshipped her: queen, icon, untouchable. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not for long," he whispered, closing the laptop. The Hope Summit was San Francisco's charity event of the year, a glittering affair where tech moguls and socialites mingled under the guise of philanthropy. Ethan, through a shell company, had donated $5 million to ensure Sophia's invitation as a guest speaker. The organizer, a frazzled woman named Claire, had gushed over the phone. "Mr. Stone, your generosity is unmatched." Ms. Lawrence thrilled to attend. "Good," Ethan said, his voice smooth through a voice modulator. "Make sure she's front and center." He'd spent weeks planning. His team at Rise thought he was attending to network, but Ethan had one goal: Sophia. He'd studied her habits, her love for vintage wine, her obsession with Chanel, her habit of scanning rooms for the most powerful person. He'd be that person tonight. The gala was held in a waterfront mansion, its marble floors gleaming under soft lighting. Ethan arrived late, slipping in unnoticed. His black tuxedo was understated but sharp, his hair styled to mask the boyish features of 2 years ago. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, blending into the crowd while scanning for her. Sophia stood on a balcony, holding a champagne flute, her crimson gown catching the light. She was mid-speech, charming the audience with her signature blend of wit and grace. "We're here to lift up the future," she said, her voice carrying. "To give back, to inspire." Ethan's lips twitched. Inspire. He remembered her palm against his cheek, her smirk as the crowd laughed. He moved closer, positioning himself near the bar where she'd inevitably drift post-speech. A waiter, tipped generously in advance, handed him a glass of her favorite Pinot Noir. "Compliments of a friend," the waiter said when Sophia approached, her eyes scanning the room. She took the glass, curious but unfazed. "Friend?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Do I know them?" Ethan stepped forward, his voice low and warm. "Not yet. But I've been looking forward to meeting you, Ms. Laurent." Sophia's eyes flicked over Ethan, assessing. He was handsome in a reserved way, tall, lean, with a jawline that suggested discipline and eyes that held secrets. She smiled, the kind of smile that had disarmed CEOs and influencers alike. "And you are?" "Evan Stone," he said, the alias rolling off his tongue. He extended a hand, and she shook it, her grip firm but fleeting. "I'm a fan of your work. The way you command a room, it's impressive." She laughed, sipping the Pinot. "Flattery's a cheap trick, Evan. What's your angle?" "No angle," he lied, leaning against the bar. "Just admiration. And maybe curiosity. You're not what I expected." Her eyes narrowed, intrigued. "Oh. What did you expect?" "Someone colder," he said, his tone playful but edged with truth. "You've got this warmth. It's disarming." Sophia tilted her head, studying him. Most men fawned or faltered under her gaze. This one didn't. He held her stare, his smile subtle, like he knew something she didn't. "You're bold," she said. "I like bold." They talked for an hour, art, travel, the tech world's absurdities. Ethan was careful, weaving truths with lies. He mentioned Rise vaguely, calling it a side project. Sophia, unaware, shared stories of her brand deals, her charity work, her life in the spotlight. Ethan listened, his face attentive, his mind cataloging every detail. "You're different," she said as the night wound down. "Most guys here are either sharks or puppies. You're neither." "Maybe I'm both," he said, his eyes glinting. She laughed, but he saw it, a spark of genuine interest. For the first time, Sophia Loren wasn't in complete control. As she left, she slipped him her card. "Call me, Evan. I'm curious about you." He pocketed it, his heart steady. "I will." Over the next month, Ethan played his role flawlessly. He texted Sophia sparingly, each message calculated to intrigue without chasing. A dinner invitation at a low-key Italian bistro. A late-night call about a book she'd mentioned. He was attentive but distant, a puzzle she couldn't resist solving. They met at a rooftop bar overlooking the Bay Bridge. Sophia wore a sleek black dress, her confidence a shield, but Ethan saw cracks. "Rough day?" he asked, sliding her a glass of wine. She sighed, swirling the glass. "My father's pushing me to take over more of the business. It's suffocating." Ethan leaned in, his voice soft. "You don't strike me as someone who gets suffocated." She smiled, but it was tired. "You'd be surprised. Everyone expects me to be perfect. The brand, the family, the image, it's a lot." For the first time, Ethan saw her not as the untouchable queen but as a woman carrying a weight. He almost felt pity, almost. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "Not with me." Her eyes softened. "You're too good to be true, Evan." He smiled, hiding the storm inside. Every word, every gesture, was a step toward his goal. But as they talked, about her childhood, her fears, her dreams, he felt a flicker of something else. Connection. No. He pushed it down. This was about payback, not feelings. By their third date, Sophia was confiding things she'd never shared publicly. "I've always been the one in control," she said, her voice low over candlelight. "But with you I don't know. I feel safe." Ethan's heart twisted, but his face stayed warm. "Good," he said. "I want you to feel that way." 3 months after the gala, Ethan was ready. He'd orchestrated every moment, from their chance meetings to the way he'd mirrored her interests. Sophia was falling for Evan Stone, unaware of the intern she'd humiliated. The irony was delicious. He planned the proposal with surgical precision. A private villa in Napa Valley, surrounded by vineyards under a starlit sky. He rented the place under Rise's name, ensuring no trace led back to Ethan Caldwell. A string quartet played softly as they dined on a terrace, the air thick with jasmine and tension. "Sophia," he said, setting down his glass. "I've never met anyone like you. You challenge me, you surprise me. I don't want to wait." Her eyes widened as he pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring, simple but flawless, chosen to match her taste. "Marry me," he said, his voice steady but laced with a rehearsed vulnerability. She froze, her breath catching. "Evan, this is sudden." "Is it?" he asked, leaning closer. "We've been building something real. I know you feel it too." She stared at the ring, then at him. For once, the queen of control was speechless. "Yes," she whispered finally, tears in her eyes. "Yes, I'll marry you." The quartet swelled, and she laughed, throwing her arms around him. Ethan held her, his smile perfect, his mind cold. Step 1 complete. That night, as she slept beside him, Ethan stared at the ceiling. The boy she'd slapped was gone, replaced by a man who'd just locked her into his game. The ring on her finger wasn't love, it was a contract. And she had no idea what she'd signed up for. The wedding was a whisper in the wind, a ceremony so private it barely existed. Ethan, still cloaked as Evan Stone, orchestrated it with precision. A cliffside villa in Santorini, Greece, where the Aegean Sea shimmered like liquid sapphire. No press, no guests, just a local officiant and a photographer bound by an ironclad NDA. Sophia, radiant in a flowing ivory gown, believed it was romantic spontaneity. Ethan knew it was control. "I've never done anything this impulsive," Sophia said, her voice soft as they stood on the villa's terrace, the sunset painting her face in gold. It's like a dream. Ethan smiled, his hand brushing hers. It's our dream now. His words were warm, but his mind was cold, calculating. The marriage certificate, signed that morning, was a chess move. Sophia Loren was his wife, legally bound, unaware of the trap she'd walked into. The ceremony was brief, vows exchanged under a floral arch. Sophia's eyes glistened as she said, "I promise to trust you, Evan, always." Ethan's vow was simpler, "I promise to give you everything you deserve." She heard love. He meant justice. Back in their suite, Sophia laughed, sipping champagne. "No one will believe I got married like this. No Instagram, no fanfare. Just us." "Exactly," Ethan said, clinking her glass. "Just us." He'd ensured no trace of the event would leak. The photographer's memory card was already in his possession, the officiant paid to forget. Sophia's world was still hers, for now. That night, as she slept, Ethan stood on the balcony, staring at the sea. The boy she'd slapped 2 years ago was a ghost, replaced by a man who'd just claimed her future. But a flicker of doubt crept in. Her laughter, her vulnerability, it felt real. He crushed the thought. This wasn't about feelings. It was about repayment. Back in San Francisco, Ethan began reshaping Sophia's world. Their penthouse, a sleek fortress overlooking the bay, became his stage. He was the perfect husband, attentive, generous, always a step ahead of her desires. But every move was a thread in an invisible web. He suggested changes subtly. "Maybe we should streamline your schedule," he said one morning, handing her coffee. "Focus on what matters." Sophia, still glowing from the honeymoon, nodded. "You're right. I've been spread thin with all these brand deals." Ethan smiled. "Let me help." He hired a consultant, a loyal Rise employee, to manage her partnerships. Slowly, her commitments shifted. Meetings were rescheduled, contracts renegotiated. Sophia didn't notice the pattern. Every change tied her closer to Ethan's empire. One evening, over dinner, she frowned at her phone. "Weird. My agent said the skincare brand pulled out. They didn't even give a reason." Ethan feigned concern. "That's odd. You're their star. Want me to look into it?" She waved it off. "No, it's fine. I trust you." Her trust was his weapon. Behind the scenes, he'd used Rise's influence to nudge brands away, citing strategic misalignments. Sophia's empire, built on her image, was starting to crack. He introduced new rules, framed as care. "Let's keep our finances joint," he suggested. "Simpler that way." She agreed, signing documents he'd prepared, a prenup disguised as a trust agreement. It gave him control over her assets, including her stake in Loren Properties. She didn't read the fine print. Why would she? Evan Stone was her safe haven. At night, Ethan reviewed his plan. The prenup was ironclad, vetted by lawyers he'd handpicked. Sophia's world was shrinking, and she didn't even see it. The unraveling was subtle, like a slow poison. Sophia's social media following, once a juggernaut, began to stagnate. Her posts, perfectly curated photos of brunches, gowns, and charity events, lost traction. Algorithms seemed to turn against her. Comments turned snarky. "Same old flex," one read. Ethan, through Rise's tech connections, had tweaked the platform's back end, burying her content. Nothing traceable, just enough to dim her spotlight. Her professional circle shrank too. Invitations to galas dried up. Brand partners ghosted her. At a coffee shop, she vented to Ethan, her voice tight. "It's like I'm invisible. I don't get it." He squeezed her hand, his face a mask of sympathy. "You're still you, Sophia. Maybe it's time to pivot. Focus on us." She nodded, but doubt flickered in her eyes. "Maybe. But it's weird, Evan. Everything's slipping." He'd anticipated this. He fed her reassurance, keeping her close while her world eroded. At a Rise board meeting, he casually mentioned a new acquisition, a media company that controlled several of Sophia's key partnerships. His CFO raised an eyebrow. "This feels personal, EC." Ethan's smile was ice. "It's business." One night, Sophia's best friend, Lila, called her out over drinks. "You're different, Lila said, swirling her martini. "You're leaning on Evan too much. Where's the Sophia who ran the show?" Sophia bristled. "I'm happy, Lila. He's good for me." Lila's eyes narrowed. "Is he? Or is he good at controlling you?" Sophia laughed it off, but the seed was planted. Ethan, watching from across the bar, noted the exchange. Lila was a problem. He'd deal with her later. 6 months into the marriage, Sophia was a shadow of her former self. Her brand was crumbling, her confidence fraying. She'd lost 3 major sponsorships, and Lauron Properties, under her father's mismanagement, was bleeding cash. Ethan, as her husband, offered to help by funneling Rise funds into the company, under his terms. Sophia, desperate, agreed. "You're my rock," she told him one night, curled against him on their couch. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Ethan stroked her hair, his voice gentle. "You'll never have to find out." But her isolation grew. Lila stopped returning calls, alienated by Sophia's dependence on Ethan. Other friends drifted away, citing busy schedules. Ethan's influence was a silent tide, pulling her allies out of reach. Sophia, once the center of every room, was now tethered to him, emotionally, financially, socially. One afternoon, she tried to log into her business accounts. Access denied, the screen read. She called Ethan, her voice shaking. "Evan, something's wrong with my accounts. Can you fix it?" He was at Rise's office, staring at a spreadsheet of her assets, now under his control. "I'll look into it," he said calmly. "Probably a glitch." It wasn't. He'd locked her out, step by step, using the prenups clauses. Sophia was a queen in a gilded cage, and Ethan held the key. She started noticing his control. He chose her outfits, her schedules, even her meals, framing it as love. "You're stressed," he'd say. "Let me take care of you." But the walls were closing in, and Sophia's instincts, dulled by trust, began to stir. The crack in the facade came on a rainy afternoon. Sophia was alone in the penthouse, scrolling through old photos on a backup drive. She clicked a folder labeled Gala Clips, expecting nostalgic footage from her glory days. Instead, she found a video, the slap. Her hand cracking across a young man's face, the crowd's laughter, the hashtags, #Slapgate, #PartyFool. She froze, the memory flooding back. She'd laughed it off then, a fleeting moment of power. But the man's face, it was familiar. She replayed it, pausing on his stunned expression. Those eyes, wide, humiliated, but piercing. She'd seen them before. Her breath hitched as she opened another tab, searching Evan Stone. No photos, no personal details, just Rise's corporate headshots of a faceless silhouette. Her heart pounded. She Googled Slapgate victim, landing on a name, Ethan Caldwell. The room spun. She dug deeper, finding an old LinkedIn profile, Ethan Caldwell, intern at a startup, deactivated years ago. His photo was grainy, but the eyes were unmistakable. Her husband's eyes. Sophia's phone slipped from her hand. She stumbled to the mirror, staring at her reflection as if it could explain. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." But it was. The man she'd married, the man she'd trusted, was the nobody she'd humiliated. Every moment, the proposal, the marriage, his help, was a lie. She sank to the floor, the weight of it crushing her. Ethan wasn't her savior. He was her reckoning. She didn't confront him that night. She needed proof, a plan. But as she lay in bed, pretending to sleep while Ethan worked late, one thought burned. What does he want? The penthouse was silent, save for the soft patter of rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sophia sat on the edge of the couch, her phone clutched in trembling hands, the #Slapgate video paused on Ethan's humiliated face. She'd spent the night piecing it together. Evan Stone was Ethan Caldwell, the intern she'd slapped 2 years ago. Her husband, her confidant, was a lie. When Ethan returned, his briefcase dripping from the rain, Sophia was ready. She stood, her voice steady but sharp. "Who are you, Evan?" He froze, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What's this about, Sophia?" His tone was calm, too calm, like a man who'd rehearsed this moment. "Don't," she snapped, holding up her phone. The video played, the slap echoing in the quiet room. "Ethan Caldwell. That's you, isn't it?" For a moment, silence hung like a blade. Then Ethan set his briefcase down, his movements deliberate. "Yes," he said, his voice low, devoid of the warmth she'd known. "It's me." Sophia's breath caught, her anger warring with betrayal. "Everything, the proposal, the marriage, your love, it was all a lie? You planned this?" Ethan's eyes met hers, unyielding. "You humiliated me. You made me a joke to the world. Did you think I'd forget?" He stepped closer, his voice a quiet storm. "I built Rise from nothing. I became someone you couldn't ignore. And now you're here, in my world. You're sick," she whispered, tears brimming. "You made me love you just to destroy me?" His jaw tightened, a flicker of something, guilt, crossing his face. "You destroyed yourself, Sophia. I just gave you the rope." She laughed, bitter and broken. "You're a monster." "Am I?" he asked, his voice softening. "Or am I just the nobody you taught to fight back?" Sophia turned away, her mind racing. She'd trusted him, bared her soul, and he'd used it to cage her. But she wasn't defeated, not yet. The next morning, Sophia tried to leave. She packed a bag, booked a flight, and called a lawyer. But every door was locked. Her bank accounts were frozen, Ethan's name was on everything, thanks to the prenup she'd signed so carelessly. She stormed into his home office, where he sat reviewing Rise reports. "You can't keep me here," she said, slamming the prenup on his desk. "I'll fight this." Ethan looked up, unfazed. "Read it again, Sophia. You signed over your stake in Lauron Properties. Your brand deals. Redirected to my accounts. You have nothing, unless I say so." Her knees buckled. "Why? What do you want?" He leaned back, his eyes cold but searching. "I wanted you to feel what I felt. Powerless. Laughed at. Alone." She sank into a chair, her voice breaking. "You've won, Ethan. You've taken everything. What's left?" He didn't answer, just watched her. For the first time, Sophia saw a crack in his armor, a hesitation. "Go to bed, Sophia," he said finally. "We'll talk tomorrow." She didn't sleep. Instead, she scoured the prenup, finding clauses that gave Ethan control over her assets, her company, even her social media accounts. She called Lila, her old friend, leaving a voicemail, "I need help. He's not who I thought." But Lila didn't call back. Ethan's influence had severed that tie too. By dawn, Sophia was a wreck, her confidence shattered. She looked at herself in the mirror, seeing the queen she'd been, gone. But something else stirred, defiance. If Ethan thought she'd break, he was wrong. Ethan found her in the kitchen, staring at a cup of cold coffee. "You're still here," he said, almost surprised. "Where else would I go?" She shot back, her voice raw. "You've taken everything." He sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "Not everything. You have a choice." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a new contract, a release from the prenup, but with conditions. She could walk away, penniless, disgraced, or stay, rebuild, and prove she was more than the shallow heiress he judged her to be. "Why give me a choice now?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "You've already won." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low. "Because I'm not sure I have." For the first time, he sounded human, not the cold architect of her downfall. "I thought this would feel better. But watching you fall apart, it's not what I expected." Sophia's breath hitched. Was this another game? Or was he faltering? "You don't get to play the victim," she said. "You lied to me. You used me." "And you used me," he countered, his voice sharp. "That slap wasn't just a moment, Sophia. It was a message. I was nothing. You were everything." I flipped the board. She stared at the contract, her mind a storm. Leaving meant starting over with nothing. No money, no name, no power. Staying meant submitting to his rules, rebuilding under his watch. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "I want you to be better," he said, his eyes intense. "Prove you're not the person who slapped me." She laughed, hollow. "You think I can change?" I think you have to, he said. Or you're done. Sophia chose to stay, not out of weakness, but survival. She wasn't ready to lose everything, not when she could still fight. Ethan's contract was strict. She'd work for Rise, start at the bottom, and rebuild her reputation through charity projects he'd oversee. No spotlight, no shortcuts. The first months were brutal. Sophia, once a socialite, now sat in a cubicle, drafting proposals for Rise's community outreach. Her colleagues whispered, unaware of her identity, but their glances stung. Ethan was relentless, critiquing her work with a cold precision that echoed his revenge. "This isn't good enough," he'd say, handing back a report. "Do better." But Sophia adapted. She studied, learned, and poured herself into the work. She launched a program to fund microloans for low-income entrepreneurs, using Rise's platform. The project gained traction, earning praise from Ethan's team. For the first time, Sophia felt pride not from likes or followers, but from impact. One night, she confronted Ethan in his office. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You could have let me go. Why keep me here?" He looked up from his desk, his face softer than she'd expected. "Because I see something in you. Something you buried under all that glitter." She scoffed. "Don't pretend you care." "I don't," he said, but his voice wavered. "But I'm not blind. You're not the same person you were." Sophia rebuilt bridges too. She reached out to Lila, apologizing for her distance. Lila, hesitant but forgiving, met her for coffee. "You're different," Lila said, echoing Ethan. "Humbler. I like this Sophia." By year's end, Sophia's charity program was a success, featured in a TechCrunch article. She wasn't the heiress anymore. She was something more. 3 years after the slap, Ethan and Sophia stood on their penthouse balcony, the city sparkling below. Sophia's program had transformed Rise's public image, and her own reputation was rising, not as a socialite, but as a philanthropist. Ethan watched her, a mix of pride and unease in his chest. He handed her a folder. "Open it." Inside was the prenup, torn in half. "You're free," he said. "Your assets, your company, everything. You've repaid it all, and more." Sophia's eyes widened. "Why now?" "Because you're not her anymore," he said, his voice soft. "The woman who slapped me, she's gone. You've built something real." Tears welled in her eyes, but she laughed, a sound both bitter and free. "You put me through hell, Ethan." "I know," he said, meeting her gaze. "And you rose from it." She stepped closer, her voice playful but sharp. "You're not off the hook." Before he could react, she slapped him, lightly, a teasing echo of that night. "That's for lying to me." He laughed, rubbing his cheek. "Fair." They renewed their vows a month later, this time in a small San Francisco chapel, with Lila and a few close friends. No secrets, no games. Sophia wore a simple dress, Ethan a plain suit. Their vows were honest. "I promise to see you, all of you," Sophia said. Ethan echoed, "And I promise to let you." As they kissed, the crowd cheered, a quiet celebration of two people who'd broken each other and rebuilt together. The slap that started it all was a distant memory, replaced by something neither had expected: equality. The end.